All right, all right, all right. It is 7 o'clock. It is Tuesday, and it is another time for conversations with Commodores. I've got one of my former teammates, Alan Young, coming out of Woodstock, New York originally. Good evening, Alan. So good to see you, bud.
It's good to be here, Bernard. Appreciate you having me on, man.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this for quite a while for many reasons. And guys, if you didn't know of Alan from back in the day, go watch some tape of this man. He was a terror. He was awesome. Got to play with him just the 1 year, and I did not like seeing him on the other side of the ball when I was on the scout team. Alan was also recently recognized as one of the top 100 Vanderbilt performers, and rightfully so. And congratulations on that, Alan, and so much more. But we're gonna get into your story a little bit and have us a good time tonight. And we got OJ Fleming says to tell you hello, Alan. Good to see you, OJ. OJ is he's here almost every Tuesday night, and I know when he's not here with us live, he catches it on replay, so we sure appreciate that. And I know we'll have a lot more folks roll in, and when I see him, Alan, I'll let you know.
Cool.
How did you get out of New York to the Deep South in 1989? What in the world caught your attention of Vanderbilt and the SEC?
And well, like I said, I'm from Woodstock, New York, and there were a couple of things. I mean, I honestly had never heard of Vanderbilt. I think first time I heard about Vanderbilt was probably midway through my senior year. And again, upstate New York is not necessarily a hotbed for football talent. So, when I was growing up, I used to tell people, and I'm going to play football in college, and, people just laughed at me. Right. And so when I finally start getting recruited, I started getting recruited, my senior year. I was, recruited by, Syracuse, Penn State, all the, Boston College, Rutgers, Virginia, Maryland. I mean, just about everybody in that school in Knoxville. And when it came down to it, I had a high school guidance counselor tell me that I should set my academic, how do you put it? You should set your academic expectations a little bit more reasonably. And so, and that was, I think, my sophomore, junior year. So my senior year, when I actually got into Harvard, I knew if I went to Harvard, I'd never know if I could play football. I knew if I went to Penn State, I'd never know if I was really smart. And the Vanderbilt opportunity came up, and I actually visited Duke and didn't like it. And I visited here, and I just liked it. I actually knew I wanted to go somewhere down south. I grew up in the north, grew up as probably the only Black competitive skier you will ever meet from upstate New York. And but I hate cold weather. and I know I want to go south. So
Alan, I got to ask, what did your guidance counselor say when you got admitted into Harvard?
You know what? People will say anything. Right? At the end of the day, he was just like, well, I forget what his exact words were, but
they let you slide because you were an athlete.
yeah. I actually had some choice words for him when I came back.
I'm sure. We got Lewis Woolridge in the house. We got Christy Houck have joined us, gentlemen. Alan, I got to ask, did you play hockey growing up?
I did not. I never played competitive hockey. Hockey was not, believe it, up where I grew up, it was not really that big a sport. I mean, hockey's all about ice time and about density of population. Woodstock is actually a pretty rural area. So,
well, I was going to ask, there was some of the other single sports, like you said, skiing and some other things were probably a little more attainable as a sport or as an activity. Well, Alan, you go and visit, you listed off some great schools, obviously Penn State, Virginia, Duke, et cetera. Coming south was obviously important to you, and Duke is about the same part of the country as Nashville somewhat. I mean, we get more weather, I guess, than Duke. But what was it when you came down? Who were your hosts? What was it about the school from either an academic standpoint or campus or athletic, or maybe it was just all three made an impression on you when you came down?
Yeah, I mean, I think the things that really made the impression on me when I came down. So Corey Harris was my host.
There's a good one to have as a host right there.
I blamed Corey for this decision for years now. Just kidding. So I've talked to Corey about it. But again, I grew up in Woodstock, New York. And I tell everybody, if you ever meet another Black person from Woodstock, I probably know them. And so I came down here, and they took me to a party over at TSU. And I'd never seen that many pretty Black women before. And that was certainly instrumental in the decision. And then I wanted to be a doctor coming out of high school. And I remember Buster Schultz took me on a tour of Vanderbilt Hospital. And that was just something that, that was probably one of the big things that did it. And I think that same weekend, Vanderbilt beat Georgia like on a last second buzzer beater.
So thank you, Barry Goheen.
Barry Goheen, yeah. And I remember being in Memorial and seeing all the energy and everything else. And it just seemed like, from a social standpoint, from the academic standpoint, being able to play in the SEC. I believe that by the time if I came here, I would know, whether I could play football and whether I was smart enough. And those are two things that were really important to me.
Well, Alan, that fall of '88, that was the Sweet 16 team.
That's right.
And Barry Goheen, Scott Droud, Will Perdue, all those guys. In fact, that team is being recognized tomorrow night. Vanderbilt is taking on Pitt, coincidentally, the team they played in the Sweet 16. That team's being recognized for their big year, the '87-'88 team. But that was a special basketball season. You saw a really good game. That Georgia game was pretty sweet. Alan, when did you hit your growth spurt as a kid? When you weren't always as the big dude you were. At some point, were you a late bloomer? Did you talk to us a little bit about?
I really was. I mean, there's not that many big people where I grew up, and it's kind of funny to say that, but
big people.
So I was a bigger kid, but going at the end of my junior football season, I was 6'1", 190.
Okay.
I might have been 195. And at the beginning of my senior year, I thought I was 6'4". I'm 6'2.5". But I was 220 pounds. And so I gained 30 pounds, grew a couple of inches between that, really between my junior and senior year, and, was able to maintain, a lot of my speed. So it was fortuitous. And then I went to a football camp because I wasn't really getting recruited. And recruiting was so much different back then. I mean, it wasn't like now where you have all these services and everything else. I went to a camp at Syracuse, and I was, again, thought I was 6'4". I was, but I was 220 pounds. And I think I ran like a 4.6 or like 4.5 something. And everybody kind of came out of the woodwork.
I was going to say, walking the halls of your high school, you must have really blended in with your size and athleticism.
Yeah.
You were hard to spot.
Yeah.
Oh, we got Aaron Smith in the house. Hey, Aaron, thanks for joining us, bud.
What's up, man?
Alan, what other sports did you play competitively besides skiing and playing football in high school? What else
So
had
I played baseball until 10th grade. And then I started running track.
Mhm.
And I was a jumper. Everyone thinks I was a thrower. I actually threw the shot put, but I did the long jump, triple jump, and threw the shot put. I actually was a state finalist in the triple jump.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was a 45-foot triple jumper in high school. So, and I think my longest long jump was I think I long jumped 22 feet. So, yeah, and I like track. I missed baseball when I was done playing, but I like track and I like skiing. Like I said, I was a competitive skier. I was did slalom and giant slalom during the winter.
Not to get too deep in the weeds here, but how long are baseball seasons in Woodstock, New York, in high school? They can't start too soon.
Well,
you didn't have indoor facilities, I assume, but I don't know.
So the big difference in baseball in the Northeast and down here is just when it starts.
Mhm.
So I didn't graduate high school until the end of June. So I think the last day of high school, I think was like June, like 24th or 25th. So,
Wow.
so baseball season didn't really start until April.
Mhm.
And it was cold at the beginning and it got warmer, at the end, but it, you certainly weren't playing in February and March like you do down here.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Guys, I'm talking with Alan Young. Alan's a 93 graduate, came in the class of 89. And who recruited you? What coach or coaches from Vanderbilt, from the staff on Watson?
Yeah. So it was Watson Brown. Watson Brown was the head coach, and then Randy Ross, who ended up going on to be the recruiting coordinator at Alabama for a while.
Coach Ross has been on our program.
Has he?
He sure has. He's what a great dude.
What he came up, and like I said, I had no idea where Vanderbilt was. I had to actually explain to people in my town in high school where the state of Tennessee was when I signed my letter of intent to come to Vanderbilt. I mean, nobody in New York understands that there's New York and there's California, and then there's some stuff in between. Nobody.
Right. Well, hold on. I'm trying to envision Randy Ross at your high school campus.
Yes.
Meeting with your coach, maybe a guidance counselor, whomever it is. And for you guys who don't know Randy, he's one of the best. Go watch our conversation. He's just one of those guys that you really want to have in your life. Yes. But he has one of the thickest Southern draws that down here in the South.
No problem.
They're a dime a dozen. But when he's recruiting you up north, I wonder how many times he had to repeat or enunciate certain things as you guys are talking. And of course,
yeah. Well, not for me. I mean, my mother's from Virginia, so that was another reason I thought about coming south. But yeah, the first time I met him, it was in my coach's office, and yeah, how you doing, Alan? My name's Randy Ross from Vanderbilt University.
Awesome.
Bad impression, but yeah, and there was just something about it. He was just a super personable guy, and got me to come down for a visit, and the rest is history.
Oh, Alan, we got Chris Kraus says to tell you hello.
Kraus.
We got Ricky Scott. Ricky Scott is in the house. Thank you, fellas. Of course, I got Alan Young. So Alan, you come down, you sign your letter, you're coming to Vanderbilt. It's the fall of 89. Did you come in the summer to get a class or two and start working out? Or did you come down with your class like in early August when the freshmen reported?
I came down, the first day I came down was the day when freshmen had to report.
All right, and who was your roommate to start with?
It was Robbie Young. Yeah.
Robbie Young, good player.
Yeah.
And were you guys over at Lipscomb or were Branscombe, excuse me?
We were in Branscombe on Lupton 3.
Yeah, that was my floor as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a transition, wasn't it? You're coming south, you got the humidity, you're playing with, you come, as we all do, big fish in a little pond in high school in our bubble that we grew up in. But now you're at Division I, SEC, and everybody's an athlete. Talk a little bit about, if you recall, and if you don't, that's fine, some of those first impressions and you trying to measure up, if you will, to figure out, hey, am I in the right place? And by the way, Brian Diggs says to tell you hello, Big Al.
Big Diggs. How you doing, man? It's kind of funny. Like I said, when coming out of high school, I did not believe that I was that good a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody talked about, especially when you go to college, just how good everyone is. And so, I worked hard, that summer, getting ready to come down here. And I had every expectation that I was going to redshirt. I didn't think about the thought of playing my freshman year never even crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I actually realized I was a good football player until I got to camp and started playing against the other people that were here.
Mm-hmm.
And our first game was Mississippi State.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time I'd ever played against anyone bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I realized then that I was a good. I had, I think, 11 tackles my first game.
Well, I was going to say, Alan,
At linebacker, I'd never played linebacker either.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah.
I didn't think that you were at your natural position to start with, but for any athlete, no matter what your sport, no matter what your level, if you're going to be successful, you have to have some confidence in your abilities. Regardless of the dude or the woman or whoever's across from you you're competing against, you have to have that internal drive. But you don't gain that confidence. You may think you've got confidence, but until you mix it up and perform, you don't really, I guess, until you're tested. Yeah. So was it that early on, your first game, that you really started building a little momentum, mentally, that, hey, I not only can survive at this level, but I may be able to thrive at this level?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably it. It's funny. So my roommate on the roads when my freshman year was Andy McCarroll.
Oh, one of my buddies.
I've told Andy so many times what a profound impact he had on me and my life. When I came here, I was pretty serious about school and playing football. And I'll be honest, the one thing that probably the reason that I chose Vanderbilt, one of the reasons I really believe that, I would find just a lot of other people like me, guys that wanted to just suck everything out of, athletics and academics. And I did that. I think one of the more disappointing things to me was the fact that there weren't more people like me here. Mm-hmm. And I tell people that all the time. Like, you know what? When I got to Vanderbilt, there were people that wanted to play football and there were people that wanted to go to school, and there weren't a whole lot of people that wanted to do both. And that was, I still have issues with that, to be honest with you.
Alan, to have that level of commitment for both
Mm-hmm.
is a rare individual.
Mm-hmm.
And you just mentioned one of my closest friends from school, and still is, who really set that bar. But the way that he set the bar, and this is a compliment to Andy in the ultimate way, is he was never the type of person who would put it in your face.
That's right.
He was a quiet leader. He did his job. He did it as well as he knew, whether it was academics or athletics. And that to me is a true leader. And the fact that you got to room with Andy and see it like I got to see it for 4 years, nothing but respect for Andy and who he is. And that's what it sounds like to you, your impression as well.
No, absolutely. I mean, I remember that some of the conversations we would have, just sitting in the room, the night before a game, just talking to him about, growing up in the South, and all of it. I mean, we were about as different as you could be, and we had so much more in common than you would ever think, for someone like that. And he was, Andy was a dedicated, football player. I mean, Andy was a baller. He wanted to play. He wanted to do these things. He wanted to win. He was always, when first in, first out of the weight room. That's just the guy he was. And, that was kind of what I wanted to be. And frankly, having that experience with him was super helpful for me.
Well, I was going to say, on a side note, I want to welcome Jim Arnold. Hey, Jim, thanks for stopping in tonight with Alan Young. One of the beautiful things about team sports to me is just what you just described. You and Andy your life experiences before Vanderbilt couldn't be more different from growing up different parts of the country, ethnicities, backgrounds, probably religions, whatever you want to say. But what brought you guys together was the school and the team and the program,
right,
and the blending of friendships, or the creation of those friendships on a team that 30 plus years later, sorry to give away your age, still have made an impression on you like they do for all of us.
Yeah, right.
And I know we're getting a little bit away, but I always love to get into these part of the stories, Alan, is that's what team sports does for people. It gives them those lifelong friendships, those lifelong memories, that you can't replicate, I think, being a regular student or just not being part of the same. It's what we've heard the term, maybe from a military standpoint, the band of brothers.
That's right.
And you and I were not the closest, but we were different ages, different positions, etc. But I still consider you one of my brothers, because we went through the same things together at about the same time, and we're teammates for a season. And I don't know, I'll get off my soapbox because I want to hear your side of this. You've got to have a ton of friends from back in the day, whether it was football team or not, that you could pick up the phone, text, call, email, whatever, and it takes you right back to certain more innocent, less stressful, hopefully, a time of your life that hopefully puts a smile on your face. I want to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, we were all young once, and we had a good time. When I think about my time at Vanderbilt, and I definitely have a lot of positive memories. I worked a lot in school, so I'm not sure I enjoyed the journey as much as I would have if I was going back. And I do this with my son, having the talk with your 17-year-old self, go and enjoy the time. I was on a mission when I got to school, and frankly, being with Andy probably put me on more of a mission. But I have some great friends that, Aaron, Robbie, and Nizam, and the guys that I played with. I wouldn't trade, that time, for anything. And it's important for kids today to realize, the college experience is important. All right. The fun part, the exciting part, again, you're young one time. So that experience is important. All right. And, take advantage of that, while you're there. So,
The other thing,
I appreciate that.
the other thing that we all bring that's different is our level of maturity, our seriousness or lack of seriousness, lack of drive, or whatever. It's all over the board because our personalities are all different, and our priorities sometimes are different. Some guys come to school, regardless of the school, they want to play their 4 years and they want to go into the pros. That's their aspiration. And others, the majority of us, at least at Vanderbilt, know that we're going to go into being a professional, but it's going to be not related to our sport. It's whatever else, law, architecture, whatever. But one thing that we all do is we all mature during that time period. Now, you were not the average immature knucklehead who came through there, but and some of your friends were, and some of your friends weren't. But here's the beautiful thing is it's that blending of, well, I know I've got to study, I know I got to do this, and then you got your buddies, come on out with us, let's go get some beer and pizza, you can study later on. And I hear what you're saying, and I was somewhat the same way. I spent way too many nights not doing the beer and pizza, and I did the school. But that's what you learn in college, is you got to find that balance. But I suspect, and I want to talk about your son for just a brief minute, you have the beautiful opportunity, and I know you're doing such a great job with him, that you're sharing some of your experience and your wisdom. But at what point, and here's a touchy question, at what point does he roll his eyes and say, Dad, I got this? Or is he still at that stage? Now I know he may watch this later on. Yeah. Does he still soak it up and really come to you for that advice? Because you've walked that walk.
It's interesting. This last year, and we'll talk about some of the recruiting process, in a bit. I'm sure we'll have a little bit of time, but the last year and the last couple of years have really been interesting. One thing, as a parent, the thing I don't know if I really appreciated was how much of only the good stuff, your kids know about you. And so the last year, I've, made it a point to talk with my son about just more of the stuff that, more of the realistic stuff, and the stuff that happened, from a school and an athletic standpoint. I mean, the one thing I say to my son about football is that the only thing certain about the game of football is that it ends. Period. It may end Friday night. It may end after high school. It may end during college. It may end after college. If you're fortunate, it may end after so many years in the pros, but it is going to end and you're going to be done. And if the only thing you've done, is think about playing this game, then when you get finished, you're going to be lost. And, I was fortunate, some of the things that I talked to him about are just being injured. All right. Because again, he sees, records, and he sees, and everybody talks to him about me when he's come to the games. He's been, God bless him, I've raised him as a Vanderbilt fan. And, so he's been to lots of really bad football games, and I've never left. I've never allowed him to leave. So I punished my son because of where I went to school. And but because of that, I think he's had this kind of superhuman belief of, oh wow, everything came really easy for you. Right. And I talked to him about it, and it's okay. So I came as a freshman. Like I said, I did not believe that I was a good football player. I just did. I thought I was okay. I thought I'd come in, I'd redshirt, I'd learn how to play, right, real football, and I'd get on the field as a redshirt freshman or sophomore or whatever when I expected. And I came in and I started playing right away. And that freshman year, I was all freshman all SEC, and I was in the Sporting News for like one of the top impact freshmen and, and then my sophomore year, beginning of my sophomore year, I tore my PCL.
Mhm.
All right. So I missed my sophomore year. I ended up redshirting. And, you kind of come back down to earth with, okay, idiot. All right. This is why you came to school. These are the things that you wanted to do. Let's get back on the horse. And I also tell them, you never know in the moment if something's a blessing or a curse. Right. And, I'll never forget the day I tore my PCL and I thought it was the end of the world. I remember crying in Norwig's office, and it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, from a Vanderbilt standpoint, because I got an extra year of eligibility, which I didn't have. I was already a semester ahead, and that's why I ended up graduating early. So they came to me and said, slow down your track. 5 years. And I was like, it's not going to take me, it's not going to take me 5 years to graduate. And I knew I wanted to do something. I went to the law school and they said I couldn't go to law school and play football. And the 3-2 program that Vanderbilt had didn't apply to Peabody at the time. So they were like, no, you can't do that either. And then I was like, well, I'm a semester ahead. I'm going to summer school again. What happens what if I graduate early? And so that's what I did. And but I never would have gotten to do that had I not torn up my knee. And then I tore my ACL, at the beginning of my junior year. And I really thought my career was over then. And but rehab and everything else, it's getting back to the point, the conversations that I have with my son are that things that that seem bad at the time aren't always bad. And you can't look at the result of someone else's life or circumstance and have any idea what they had to go through to get there. All right. I mean, I never slept in college. I didn't. Business school, playing my last 2 years in business school, I just didn't. I never slept. So when I went into banking, it was easy for
me. You got the rest.
It was easy. It was. And the couple of years that I spent, screwing around in the NFL, those were the easiest years of my life. They honestly were. People are like, oh, isn't it hard? I'm like, no, that was the most free time I've ever had. And I see why everybody gets into trouble, because there's so much time and you have nothing to do.
It's we've talked about this in the last couple of shows. During the season, when you're like in the fall, you're so regimented, you're so by the clock that you really, it's if you don't follow it, you're not going to be there very long, because you have to have your priorities. But I want to step back away from that and talk about when you first hurt your PCL. For an athlete, that's the worst, when you're injured and you can't compete.
Yes.
And I suspect from an athletic standpoint, it may have been the lowest time of your life athletically. How much?
Tearing my ACL was the lowest.
The second injury.
Yeah, that's like.
Well, for either of those time periods, and I don't want to dwell on it long, because I know it's not a great time for you to reflect upon, but Alan, did you feel you were distanced from the team, or did you still feel part of the team while you're doing your rehab? I know you're with WIG and in the training every day, you're doing all that, but you're not out on the field. You're not necessarily in the locker room. What kind of mindset were you going through during the rehabs?
I think that I realized a couple of things. Actually, both times I got hurt. The first time I got hurt, I think the thing I realized was, what, life goes on, right? Move the drill. All right, that's it. I mean, you realize that, as important as you think you might be to the team or to anything else, if you get hurt, the team, everything continues to move on. Yeah. And you do feel distant. But again, I look at the two injuries that I had. And I remember when I tore my PCL, I had great grades those 2 semesters. Mm-hmm. And, I will never have respect for a normal college student not doing well. Mm-hmm. Right? Because I'm like, you have all the time in the world. What the hell are you doing that you can't study and get good grades? I mean, I'm getting out of practice at 8 o'clock and doing the same work. And, that when I got hurt when I was out of football that one semester, I worked out a lot, but I still had so much more time. Yeah. And I really, and I got to meet so many more students. I mean, I from a social standpoint and just from a networking standpoint, I met so many people that semester. Mm-hmm. And when I tore my ACL, it was right before I went into business school. Mm-hmm. So the positive of that was I didn't practice for the first month of the season. Mm-hmm. All right, I was rehabbing, and I hurt tore my ACL in spring ball. So by the time I got back, I came back, I think the 6th game of the year, mm-hmm. 5th or 6th game of the year. So I came back in 6 months, actually. I tore it in
and back April. Then that's pretty,
yeah, it was quick. They said it was like the fastest they'd ever seen by a couple of months. And I played.
So that's like the fall of 91, maybe?
That was the fall of 92.
92. So that's 30 years ago, and the sports medicine is so different.
Yeah.
Than back in the day.
So my doctor was Dr. Spindler. So Kurt Spindler, mm-hmm. and he was the first one of the first people that was doing the middle third of patellar tendon mm-hmm. surgery. And I'm 51 now. I've never had, I don't exercise, but I've never had any other issues with my knees. I don't have arthritis. Mm-hmm. And again, I played, 4 years after that. So
you brought up a very important thing that sometimes I overlook in these conversations. And guys, I'm talking with Alan Young. Alan coming out of Woodstock, New York, making his way in the late 90s down to campus and doing all kind of great things then and certainly now. When we're playing ball during our years, in my experience, Alan, we're kind of in our bubble. The team is your fraternity, your life, it evolves and revolves around that being, for most of us, that's our social scene.
Yep.
And depending on your personality type, you either do or do not socialize with the civilians, the rest of the population. I had my limited group of friends, but frankly, from a timing standpoint, I would rather, my priorities were really trying to study more than socialize. Yeah. That was just me. So here's my question to you. When you were rehabbing those 2 times, you mentioned you met a whole lot more students than you ever did when you were actively on the roster and playing. And I think that's such an important concept that's lost on athletes from part of the college experience. And you've already touched on it earlier about maybe certain things you might have done a little bit differently. And I suspect that's part of your conversations with your son. But did you have that same recognition about the bubble of the football program versus when you were rehabbing and able to get out and socialize more? Did you see that back then?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this is a statement that I'm going to make about Vanderbilt, period. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that every coach has done wrong as it relates to talking to football players about the value of Vanderbilt. All right. One, the value of the Vanderbilt education is a lie. Let's just put that out there. Until or unless you understand the value of the network that goes along with the education.
Mhm.
And the value of the edge of the network is only as great as the number of people that you know.
Mhm.
And that is not the number of football players that you know.
Yeah.
So when James Franklin was here, he had me come in and do a talk. And what I said to football players in the room was, put your head down and raise your hand, right? If you answer this question. And I said, how many of you have parents that are millionaires?
Mhm.
One or two hands went up.
Mhm.
I said, okay, how many of you got a 35 on your ACT or 1500 or better on your SAT?
Mhm.
A couple of hands went up.
Yeah.
And then I had everyone open their eyes, and I said, well, a couple of hands went up for each. What do you think would happen if I asked that same question in any class at Vanderbilt?
Mhm.
Right. And my point was, if you spend 4 years here, and the only people you know when you graduate are the people in this room, you spent 4 years around the dumbest, brokest people on campus.
It's true.
All right. And that's stupid.
Yeah.
Right. And I said, take your freaking headphones off,
Mhm.
talk to the person to the left or to the right of you, because you have no idea who they are
Yeah.
and what they're going to do. And chances are they're smarter than you. And chances are they have more money than you or anyone else in this room or their parents do. And you have no idea who their father is. That's the kid that's going to get you the job when you graduate. Right. The people in this room aren't. All right. And if you think you're going to play football for the rest of your life, like I told my son, football ends.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to end. So, I think the worst thing you could do as a student athlete coming to Vanderbilt is spend all of your time with the people on the football team. I mean, it's going to happen naturally. They're going to be your friends. They're going to be your friends for life. You've got to get to know other people. And frankly, that's why one of the reasons why our just total network is terrible, because we don't learn that early.
Alan, and it goes back to what we talked about earlier about priorities. When you come to school, what's your priorities? Do you think you're gonna utilize those years to go into the league or any professional sports league? Or are you looking to go on to graduate school or get into business? But you're so right. And I think it starts at home, when you're growing up as an adolescent. And it certainly should be not fulfilled. That's not the right word. It should be solidified. It should be cultivated during your collegiate experience. And a lot of guys don't take advantage of that. I hear exactly what you're saying. And I'm wondering, it'd be really interesting. I know that was 10 years ago, you probably spoke with Coach Franklin's team. It'd be really interesting to see how many of those guys actually took to heart and followed some of your advice.
I have seen guys from that team. Every time I see one of them, they stop me and they say it changed my life.
Oh, Alan, that's fantastic.
And the disappointing thing to me is that the message hasn't carried on. Right. That's probably the most disappointing thing to me. At the end of the day, you have an opportunity when you come to Vanderbilt. It's not the number 15. Right, with the ranking, it's not, you do not learn anything different at Vanderbilt than you learn at that school in Knoxville. The only difference is you are in class with people that are smarter, or have more money. And if you don't take advantage of that, you're missing the entire reason to come here. I mean, that's the only reason to come. And if you don't do it, you're missing the entire reason to come to the school.
You raised this is such a very important topic, and I certainly don't want to put a cap on it tonight, but I do want to continue with your story. But I want to come back to this issue another night on a panel with you and others, and you and I can talk about it in a little bit. But I want to get back to your story because there's a lot more to it than we haven't gotten to, and I want to be respectful of your time, and also want to welcome Everett Robinson is in the house. Hey, Everett, I hope to see you tomorrow at lunch, bud. Javon Hay and Coach Larry Clark are coming down recruiting. And Alan, I think we got about 10 of us that are going to get together for lunch. And I can't wait to be a fly on the wall and hear some of those tales at lunch, all these former jocks sharing stuff. But Alan, let's go back to your senior year at Vanderbilt. You, by this point, you've got your undergraduate, you're working on your graduate degree, and you're sitting on a fence in my mind. You're sitting on a fence. On one side of you, the academic side, you've got business opportunities you're trying to put into place, and maybe that's what you want to do for the next 40, 50 years, and you're doing now. The other side of that fence is the athlete in you.
Yes.
You have an opportunity there. And this is your limited window for all the athletes of that age who have that caliber of athleticism. So take us a little bit into that process, because I know you were able to experience both. And you're one of the rare, it's such a small percentage, whether it's Vanderbilt or whatever school, to be able to do both. So take us there, if you will, that senior year, your final season and leading that.
You know, it's kind of funny. Like I said, I was coming off of my second major knee injury, right? So again, when I hurt my knee, I didn't know if I was going to play again. And then when I came back, obviously I did everything I could to get back on the field.
And now you're playing for DiNardo. I mean, both injuries were with DiNardo.
No, my first injury was with Watson.
Okay, so that was in 90, then 2 years later, or a year and a half later, your second injury. I don't mean to interrupt you, but how did DiNardo treat you and your injuries at the time?
You know, the one thing I'll say about Jerry was, and I can't say I had this feeling when I was playing for him, because he was a hard person to play for.
Yeah.
He was really supportive of everything that I did academically. You know, to the point where, you know, he was instrumental in, I mean, he you know, he was one of the people that just stood up when I was trying to get into Owen, right? And so I don't have anything bad to say about him from the standpoint of the support. You know, after I hurt my knee, I was dejected. I was like, you know, maybe I want to do a semester abroad or whatever. And he was like, oh, okay. You know, he was actually super supportive of that. And I think it's because he knew how much football meant to me and what it felt like it was taking away by being hurt. So my senior year, it's funny. So my sophomore year, the end of my sophomore year, before I tore my ACL, I was in the Sporting News as one of the top 10 in my position. And then I tore my ACL, and I came back that following year. I had a few sacks. But, you know, I was like, you know what, the only way I'm ever going to play, you know, beyond this is, you know, Derek Thomas had his record of 22 sacks, and I'm like, I got to get 23. So that was my goal. That was my goal going into my senior year. I 23. I'm going to get 23. I don't care what else happens. I'm going to get that. And I came up woefully short. And actually, you know, when I set the record my senior year, I didn't even know. I didn't know. I had no idea. A reporter came up to me after the game. It was like, congratulations. I was like, well, for what? Because I don't even think we won the game. And that's when I found out about it. And you know, it was weird. My senior year was weird. We didn't have a great year that year. We didn't score any points. When we scored 63 points against Hawaii this year. I don't know if we scored 63 points that entire year. So the year I set the record, we were behind almost every game at some point. We were never like playing with a lead. I was never like pass rushing, you know, against teams trying to throw the ball to win.
Yeah.
And then, so I ended up getting voted. So the Birmingham News, I think, had me as first team, all SEC, and I think I was second team for AP and for one of the others. And I didn't get invited to any All-Star games. So I didn't get invited to the Blue Gray game. I didn't get invited to any East-West Shrine game. I got invited to do nothing. Teams wouldn't come work me out. And that was a sore spot for me for some years. I ended up getting a free agent contract with the 49ers. And I think that the biggest reason I wanted to go was just, again, I've lived with a chip on my shoulder my entire life. And I wanted to prove that I could play. It wasn't something that I had to do. I knew that I was never going to make my life's money playing football. It wasn't a money thing. And I made more money my first year of banking than I ever made playing football. But it was something that I really felt like I had to do. And so I went out there, I got cut, didn't play at all. That was a weird situation. I went out, I never even practiced. And then they cut me at I played one play during preseason that year. And I made the tackle, actually. And then I went to Scotland and played with the Scottish Claymores, which that's another situation that I wish I had just appreciated more when I was there, because it was such a great experience getting to travel around Europe playing football and playing in Frankfurt and Barcelona and all that. And I have friends from that team, and just you meet all the other guys in the league. It was a really cool experience now that I look back on it.
And you thought trying to learn the dialect of folks in the Deep South was tough?
Oh my God. I actually speak German, or I have, and it was honestly easier for me to understand people when I went to Frankfurt than it was people in Edinburgh, like at a bar.
Well,
it's that I would honestly have to take a step back and think, like, what the hell is he saying?
Yeah.
I just couldn't understand. It's funny, but I just couldn't understand. But
football afforded you a pretty cool endeavor that, again, even a smaller percentage of us never get to do, and that's living in Europe and playing a sport that you so enjoy.
Yeah,
just for a short period.
Yeah, and the coolest thing, and one of the other things that I told Franklin's team was, if you are fortunate enough to play in the NFL, what I'm telling you is twice as important. When you're a professional football player, anybody in any city will take your call. Right? When I was in New York, so I played with the Jets, and you have access that nobody else has. And you need to understand, networking isn't what you can do for what someone else can do for you. Networking is what you can do for someone else. So you go to a city, you can call the mayor and say, hey, you know what? I have 2 tickets for this game, and why don't you bring your kids down to after the game, and I'll bring them in the locker room, and that person will never forget you. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter how powerful they are. You have all the power. And it's the same when you're a student athlete. It's the one time in your life where people actually care who you are.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't take advantage of that, you're just an idiot. And the thing that I'm grateful for about playing football, I was never a star in the league. I never played much, but I got to meet some really, really cool people, and I got to go to some events that other people just can't comprehend.
Yeah.
Right. You get invited to all the grand openings. I got invited to the All-Star Cafe. I met Donald Trump and Shaq and Tiger Woods and all these people. They didn't know who I was. I never.
Is there a photo of you? Is there a photo of you, Shaq, Trump, and Tiger together?
I wish there was.
Now that'd been a story right there.
I wish there was, but I got to I mean, Boomer Esiason and, Terrell Owens was my roommate for the 49ers.
Nice.
And I got to
Nice.
play with Marcus Allen. And so you get to meet people,
Mhm.
and you get to do things that other people just don't get to do. That's one of the things that being an athlete affords you. And, like I said, I never made, again, had I made any money then, it's not what they're making now.
Yeah.
But the experience was just something that I would never pass up.
You mentioned earlier, we all as athletes run out of time. At some
Yes, we
point,
do.
games have to stop. You remember recognizing and realizing that for yourself.
Oh, absolutely. So when I was with the 49ers preseason game, I tore up my ankle, and they offered to put me on IR, and I was like, it's time for me to get a job.
Mhm.
And I never felt bad about it. I was like, I've gotten my MBA. That summer before that, I'd actually done an internship with Montgomery Securities, and they offered me a job. And like they said, whenever you're done playing football, just come back. And so I called them, was like, I'm done. And but it was I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to do it,
Mhm.
because people don't, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just one of those really rare things. And then banking, I mean, I do feel like, Forrest Gump in many ways, because I went from that experience to investment banking, which
Mhm.
in its own right was another just crazy rare experience, that I had the chance to do things that other people just don't get to do. And so I've feel super blessed to have done that.
But it's not by accident that any of these things have happened for you along the way. Part of the things that you may or may not admit to here tonight is you recognized things and opportunities. Now, whether you were ready to make the move or the move was made for you is all just where we are in stations in life. I get that. But being stagnant and not making a move, not bettering yourself, that's where we get in trouble.
That's right.
That's where life doesn't evolve, and that's life is meant to evolve. And you've done such a beautiful job from a business standpoint to get to the point where you are. And here's where I'm going, and we've just got a couple more minutes, Alan. And this is the lesson I'm hoping that you can share. Whether you are Forrest Gump and fall into it and it finds you, or you truly recognize those signs and make that move, whatever it has been your path to get you to where you are. But I want you to share, how is it, if you can, how is it that you know when it's time? You knew when it was time to move on from football. You'd gotten hurt, major injury for the third time. That was an easy sign.
Yeah.
May not have been easy to admit it, but you knew it was time. But take us beyond that. How did you recognize these signs in the business world that it's time to make a move or to do something pivot?
I think hindsight is always 2020, right? And I think that anyone who says that looking back, they knew when it was, that they really knew what they had when they had it. I mean, Chris Krause is on the phone on the line right now, and I'm sure he'll tell you, what, there's an element of luck, there's an element of just good fortune.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, what I really think, what I think separates really successful, and I don't know if I call myself really successful, but the most successful people from everyone else is the way that they are able to relate to situations and people, and understand that your success in life is really based on how other people feel about you, and how, who is willing to help you, and who you're willing to help.
Mhm.
Right. And at the end of the day, everyone wants you to help them, but nobody wants to help you. And until you help someone else, they're not going to want to help you. And I think one of the things that, there's a couple of things that I think people will say about me. Anyone, from the time I was in kindergarten till now, is I don't know if I've ever met anyone willing to work harder. And I've always put the interests of other people in many cases ahead of my own.
Mhm.
And uh-oh, I think we're losing it. Are we? Okay.
I'm here.
We're good. And so when if I am talking to a younger player, I'm talking to someone else, that the things that I would tell them are,
Mhm.
if you want to get ahead in life, you've got to, you can't be selfish, honestly, and really expect to do well. I mean, ultimately you will, but at some point you're going to need someone's help, and people will help people that have helped them. Right. Networking is, that the ultimate networkers are, the quintessential, hey, I got a guy.
Mhm.
Right. You know what? I got a guy for that. I got a guy for that. But, it's the Godfather. It's, I did him a favor. So he's going to do me a favor.
Yeah.
And frankly, one of the things, and I'm going to get back to this, is one of the things that I think is wrong with our school is
Mhm.
our school has this mentality that the athletes owe them. And there's, our athletic program has not done the right thing by a lot of its athletes. And I'm going to say that, and I honestly don't care who looks at it. Right. And I hope the coaching staff looks at it, because, if you wonder why our ex-athletes don't come back, it's because they were lied to about the value of the Vanderbilt education. They were lied to about the fact that Vanderbilt cares about them, because it doesn't. Right. If it did, it would figure out how to manifest, all of the value that it has in its alumni network. And it still hasn't. We're the 15th ranked school in the country. We probably, if you ask any Vanderbilt alumni, whether they're football or not, we probably have the worst alumni network of any school in the top 40. Right. And I think it's the same for football. And it's not because of success. It is because, what, we don't know where each other is. It's not a priority, and unless there's money to be raised. And you know what? I don't think the athletic department just doesn't reach out, and there's too many people. There's people on this call. How many generations of Vanderbilt athletes graduated and had no idea what they were going to do the day after they graduated?
Oh, sure. Alan, I'm sure that's I'm sure that's not just a Vanderbilt thing.
No, I don't know. Well, but what I'm going to say is that the problem I have is that that's what we sell.
Well, sure. No, I get it.
It's what we sell. And if you're going to sell something, if you're going to sit in someone's living room and make them a promise, you have the ability to make good on that promise, and people haven't. And there's people that are really upset about that. And that's a problem that we've had. It's a problem that we still have. It's a problem. It's solvable, right? But
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. And I know my experience is not yours and yours is not mine, but I have heard from many who echo your sentiments on this show and in private over the years. And I get it. I do. I will say this, and we're going to close in just a minute. I will say this. I, for one, am giving the current administration the benefit of the doubt from what I see of what they are putting in place. I do realize that prior administrations have probably made similar or lesser extent attempts that have not held in place. I get that. But I'll give Candace, I'll give Chancellor Jeremiah and Coach Lee the benefit of the doubt for now, because of what I do see with the Ingram Center, with the black and gold and those kind of things. And respectfully, Alan, I do want to pause that conversation. I do want to come back to it another day. I promise you I'm working on a panel that I want you to be on for this very reason. But I want to end the conversation on your perspective of the modern athlete. Again, going back to your son a little bit, it's a much different experience for that generation, our kids' generation, than it was ours. And you mentioned earlier about recruiting. There was no NCSA, there was no Chris Krause. I mean, he was with us on the team. There was none of that in place. There was no huddle. There was none of that. But now, I suspect, tell me if I'm wrong, as soon as your son's game is over, he's got the plays that can be loaded into huddle within a matter of minutes. So his actions can be seen by the world recruiting wise. How he probably heard your recruiting stories and he's like, what in the world? How did y'all survive? But how do you, as a parent, how do you see other families dealing with the modern athlete and the recruiting process in this world? I call it the Instagram world of instant gratification. No offense to your son, it's just that generation.
Oh God. Yeah, it is. When my son started the recruiting process, I really believed that I would be able to be somewhat helpful. And what I will say is this recruiting process is nothing like ours.
Yeah.
And it is 100% more stressful.
Mm-hmm.
And primarily just because
for you or for him?
For both, probably. I mean, I don't think my father knew what the hell was going on. I mean, he would take me wherever I wanted to go, but he had nothing to do with my recruiting process. I feel like I'm trying to be as involved as possible, and it's just impossible.
Is it a helpless feeling for you as a parent? Because it was, my daughter's a few years older and she played lacrosse in college, and I didn't play lacrosse. I don't know that world. I had to follow her lead and just be supportive. I couldn't be proactive. I had to be reactive. I don't know if that's your
is. I feel completely helpless because, for more reasons than one, but one, everything is on Twitter. So you see everyone else that's getting an offer. You see, and when coaches say things to you, you know whether they're lying to you or not, like right away. The other thing, it's just, you got the transfer portal. You've got everything. It is so much different, and it's hard. It is. It is nothing like what I experienced. And it's, I think that there's a lot of kids that, that are, I'm not even going to say fall through the cracks, because I don't think that's the right terminology, but college football as we know it is dead, right? I mean, this is free agency at its finest. It is pay for play, and there is no more development of high school athletes going to college. It's, let's let someone else develop them. Let's let the lower level develop them. unless you're a 5-star athlete or a 4-star athlete. And otherwise, we're going to go to the transfer portal and get someone else because you can't afford to lose.
But
Right? It's hard for the coaches. I don't envy them.
I would
either.
never, I wouldn't want to be a college coach to save my life. But here's one of the things that I've learned. I knew about you, but I've relearned tonight is that while your son is going through this process, he's not doing it alone. He's got a father who's been through it. He's got a father with a good head on his shoulders. He's got a father who has instilled those priorities. So I'm not worried about where the young Mr. Young ends up going to school, and we're certainly going to follow his progress. Alan, I do, again, I want to be respectful of your time. You and I could talk for hours. I know that, but
Yeah.
I know we need to bring it to a close for now. And don't go away when we sign off. I want to tell you a couple of things, but this is why, guys, conversations like this with Alan and so many others who've been through our program are so important. We're telling the oral history of each individual that weaves together the program's history, good, bad, or indifferent. Everybody's perspective, everybody's experiences are different. We have a lot of commonalities, but we have so many different perspectives and experiences. So, Alan, I want to thank you again so much for being with us tonight. This was a delightful conversation, a needed conversation that will continue another day. So thank you, my friend.
Thank you. And, just in class, I feel like I'm truly blessed to have gone to Vanderbilt and to have had the experiences. I also feel blessed that, I have been able to navigate and benefit from a lot of things in ways that I think other people haven't been. Right. So a lot of the issues that I have with the school aren't based on on anything that it has or hasn't done for me, because I understand how to navigate the network. Right. I understand a lot of things, at levels I just don't think other people have. And that's just, based on my experience. But there are a lot of people that don't. And that I think that is my I think that's, my thought is I just want, it's a bridge builder, right? It's what do you do to make the path easier for those that come behind you? And I think it's harder than it needs to be.
It is harder. It particularly in today's environment, it is harder. And yes, the school could do a lot to bridge that gap, if you will. But hang on there for just a minute, Alan. Guys, I've got shows lined up Tuesdays all through the end of the year. We're now into February. So please keep coming back, 7:00 on Tuesday nights. Y'all continue to be well. Hang in there. Anchor down.
Thanks for having me on, Bernard.
Of course, of course.